And now chapter 8, Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Done. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, "The royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees, because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment." Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavad Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries, for the sake of very little pleasure. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumara, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly like you about the truths regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme, from Lord Sankarshan, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. At that time, Lord Sankarshan was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva, but for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and began to speak. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region through the water of the Ganges, and therefore the hair on their heads was wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the Serpent King when they desire good husbands. The four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumara, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time, Lord Sankarshan, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. Lord Sankarshan thus spoke the purport of Shrimad Bhagavatham to the great sage Sanat Kumara, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara also, in his turn, when inquired of by Sankyayana Muni, explained Shrimad Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Sankarshan. The great sage Sankyayana was the chief amongst the transcendentalists, and when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Shrimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master, Parashara, and Brihaspati both heard him. The great sage Parashara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Puranas, or Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. At that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta. And although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, The Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. The Lord lay down for 4,000 yuga cycles in his internal potency, and by his external energy he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Piercing through, this sum-total form of the fruitive activity of the living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower, generated from the personality of Vishnu. And by his supreme will, it illuminated everything, like the sun, and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as the Supersoul. And when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the Self-Born, was generated. Brahma, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the whirl. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. Lord Brahma, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus, or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. Lord Brahma, in his ignorance, contemplated, "Who am I that am situated on the top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water." Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. But in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root.